Like the first reflection is that the phenomena of the book, The Spirit Level, by Wilkinson and Pritchett, already demonstrated rather conclusively that equality is good for all. And that all classes, all strata, benefit together from a highly equal society, and it's a healthy society, and an unequal society, and a severely unequal society will be unhealthy, dysfunctional, and it's bad for everyone, including the richest and the most powerful. This is a lesson. So this leads us to that's an empirical, evidentiary-based argument about the benefits of equality as a goal in this world. The other one is a comment that John Kenneth Galbraith made about why he was asked why is he so concerned about the poor. And he said, well, and development, because I have lived a good life, the good life. And I think that everyone on earth deserves the same. And that is what we should be trying to realize. So I'm just kind of summarizing a few sort of simplified concepts, some of the things that Eric is saying from my own perspective of what might be needed. I'll start there. So sort of directions. Which one is deconcentration, which we've been talking about again and again. The deconcentration of wealth. But that also means it implies a redistributive politics around the world, inside countries and between countries. We know this. That can be effected through a variety of means, but the great empowerment of the social forces around the world is necessary to create the political process which would bring it to pass. Without movements, nothing happens in history. Not really. Nothing progressive. And that also involves the most fundamental element, which is a redistribution, not merely of income or of money per se, but of assets. Whatever those assets are in the world today, we need a profound redistribution of those assets if we're going to have a fair society. Then there's decommodification. Decommodification of what's normally called nature, but I wish to call it the web of life, because that's an entirely different concept. Nature involves an inbuilt mental dichotomy between the human beings and all the rest of life on Earth, which is false as a construct, always has been, I would submit, and therefore needs to be overturned radically. So I want to adopt this concept of the web of life, and so we have to increasingly decommodify the vital elements of the web of life in order to preserve all life. The Anthropocene, to me, actually means that our interventions are now so great as a species that we have an ultimate moral responsibility to preserve all other life on Earth. That's what it means to me. It is not our ability of arrogant power over, but our ability and our imperative to preserve and protect all the web of life, which just also happens to be in our species' self-interest. So then, that also leads this decommodification to a radical conservation ethic around the planet. There are many proposals about that, but it's also related to a new paradigm, philosophy of life, call it the circular economy, in which the false economics, where it used to be, about the whole value chain and commodity production and realization of value, is that you take something from nature that's useful for humans, you make a product from it that's useful to humans, and all the other elements of waste and pollution and so on are externalities in the paradigm that you throw away in nature and forget about. Except that's entirely an illusion, because the biosphere is one unified enclosed system. So there aren't any externalities. So the move to the circular economy based on real accounting is absolute necessity. It's the radical paradigm shift that's needed to rebuild our civilization in the 21st century on a sustainable and just basis. That's a necessity to do that, because we cannot continue with the false economics that has led to this catastrophic situation. Then there's definancialization, about which we have talked so much. The world economy is hyper-over-financialized, and this is highly destructive and destabilizing of the real economy. It's parasitic, it creates oligarchization, plutocracy, it undermines systematically substantive democracy all over the planet. So this is then we discuss the principal means by which the great empowerment would move around the planet to enact politics that leads to definancialization, which is also connected to deconcentration because we've had the problem of too big to fail by one great financial organization after another, and they continue to merge. And this problem has to be head-on addressed as one of the most important strategic political problems of our time. So then there's the democratization of global governance. So that's it's not a slogan. There are ways in which the idea is to embed people's sovereignty through civil society organizations and mass organizations who are directly affected by whatever issue area that element or that institution in global governance is actually addressing. There are some examples of that I'll mention in a moment. But that, there's as a kind of a general principle to redesign global governance so that it is radically democratized. So it's no longer a matter of excluding non-state actors from actual decision-making influence. They must be incorporated and embedded into the new institutions, and they're redesigned to have actual decision-making influence. The last thing I'll say is that just a few examples of, for example, through the attempt to, right now, which Ecuador and many other governments are involved in trying to do, a binding code of conduct for transnational corporations through the mechanism of the Convention on Human Rights. So this effort is ongoing. It's a global political process. It's a necessary process, and we wish it would have success. The people's sovereignty embedded in the global governance institution. I use the example of the Committee on World Food Security in the Food and Agriculture Organization, which is a successful case of having actually institutionally embedded the representation of civil society organizations in the actual policy-making process. In other words, it can be done, and there is a working example, which people find encouraging. The last bit I talked about in some of one or two of the papers I mentioned, I'll send, is the big idea about the future of global development or development on the global scale being a great convergence. So a convergence between global north and global south, a parity of their power, a parity of their influence in global governance, a parity of their standards of living and quality of life. Right? Which finally gets over the old dichotomies that were created through the colonial era, finally. As a goal, global convergence of that way, and the other ways between rural and urban. So that the new paradigm of economics and the circular economy means that you ruralize the urban sphere of life in certain ways, and you urbanize the rural sphere by bringing the standard of living and the amenities in the rural sphere up to the level of the urban sphere. And that ends with the push imperative of mass migration all over the planet, because people won't have a necessity to have to do that. And one of the ways I think we could affect that, which is most radically redistributive and at the same time fights climate change, which is a kind of global energy revolution, where we have the solar power, photovoltaics especially. The costs are so low now, the experts will tell you at the various institutes. There's been a remarkable change in the economic cost structure of renewable energy, especially through photovoltaics, and it's just awaiting to be implemented all over the planet. You could give electricity to every poor person all over the planet at lowest cost to them, or even make it free. And this would be one of the most dramatic redistributions of social power and of wealth you could possibly imagine, an anti-poverty measure and anti-climate change measure, and the technology is there. It's possible. So you have to dare to dream the impossible and propose the impossible to make it happen at all. That's all.